Welcome to another episode of the Dynamic Thriving Podcast. I am your host, author, publisher, and joy advocate, guiding you into all things life transformational. And in this series, I have the privilege of interviewing authors who have made a difference and made an impact in the world with their published books or chapters in anthologies. And today, my guest is my dear friend and mentor, Lori Raggio. Welcome, Lori. I'm so happy that you joined me today.
Thanks, Marianne. As usual, we always have these amazing conversations that we actually never know exactly where they're going to go. So it's always an adventure.
It totally is an adventure, and I love it. I love it. So, the mission of my heart is to spread more love and joy around the world. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like interviewing these authors is one way I get to do that, because I get to highlight the words and the hearts and the vulnerable stories and the healing and the transformation that happens as people start writing their books or participating in an anthology and getting a chapter written and put out there into the world. And so I just want to ask Lori, who is Lori and what good do you bring into the world?
Well, it's kind of fascinating because I've been working on changing that up a little bit and how I answer that. And so I think today I want to answer that as I am a certified why coach. Oh. And as part of being a certified why coach, I needed to learn my own why, how, and what, which is something I included in the book. But I actually believe that there's always a better way to show up and to be, and how we show up impacts what we do. So I believe there's always opportunities and possibilities to show up as our greatest self.
Yes.
And really kind of as a lifelong learner, I really like to partner with people to help them co-create the life that they desire and they deserve. And it really is aligned with their passions and their talents and their interests and their values. And really one of the ways I do that is by offering this consistent, container or environment of safety and trust. Yeah. And that's then kind of how they're sharing and all of their growth and transformation happens.
Yes. Yes. So you've written another book. Yeah. And tell us a little bit about that. I have a copy of it here.
Yes.
Unmuted Voices. So tell us about that.
This is actually my sixth in the past 3 years, sixth chapter in a book anthology in the past 3 years. And this one was most special, really, to me, because 3 of my coaching clients are also authors. And so it was just this really neat feeling to encourage them to start to write their stories. Mm-hmm. And then watch the transformation that has happened, because they have started to put their stories out there. And in fact, and you know this, Marianne, I mean, one of those authors is now ready to write her own book. And she's just so thrilled and excited about it. And so am I, because I can only imagine what this is going to end up being,
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that was so exciting when I told you about wanting to do the book and offered that for you to be in it. And then you just sort of gathered this little entourage that followed you over. And yes, I mean, so many of them even received such benefit of being in this. And like you said, one of the ladies is now working with me to develop her manuscript. Yeah. Because she had such an amazing experience by being in one chapter of this book. Yes. It made such a profound impact on her that she now was ready to tell her story. And so we were working on that. So I so appreciate that you not only came along, but you brought others with you. That was very
and I guess that's kind of part of as I've participated in these 6 different anthologies, I mean, the key thing for me is that I've been able to tell a little bit more of my story each time.
Yes.
And this was the very first time that I've publicly talked about my anorexia and how that initially led to me being muted, but then eventually really offered me the gift of being unmuted. And so, as I've looked back at these chapters, I hopefully maybe next year will be ready to write my own book. But I mean, it's just, each chapter is really expanding my offering of what's happened in my life and how I use that to support others.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so many times, I mean, even like you're talking about that each time you write an anthology, and now this being your 6th chapter, and they're different. They're different.
Yeah, they're definitely different. Yeah.
They're different messages. They're different vulnerable stories that helped you grow, helped you become aware, and you got those aha moments that something had to shift. So, I always talk about our mess being our message. What we go through, that mess that we lived that kept us muted, or however it affected your life, usually becomes kind of what we either coach about or talk about or have a product for, because we know it supports the healing or the transformation. So, why was this book important for you to participate in? What about it? What about your story did you want to tell? Because you knew it was time. You'd healed enough past that it was time to expose that.
Right. And I also just want to bring something up because people who might be watching this are seeing this, but the sun is starting to come in my window, and I'm trying to move so it's not showing up on my face, but it's fascinating that the sun is just, it's joining us and highlighting our conversation.
You have a prism on your face.
I know, I have a prism on my face.
It's okay. It's beautiful.
But I think for me, one of the things was talking about how I think my anorexia started, and it had to do with some major illnesses as a very young child. And so, I could go back and look at it as, these childhood illnesses can leave a scar on our lives and can also, though, be a blessing. And so as I am, have grown and matured, and now at 61 can kind of look back and say, yeah, some of it was very painful, but it really has offered me this experience and this viewpoint that now I can support and help others with.
Yes.
And so life doesn't have to be challenge and suffering. So that was really kind of the message, I think, that came to me really loud and clear this time.
Yes.
And the timing of writing this, one of the things when you have anorexia is that you close down yourself. I mean, the muting happens because you're really allowing your body to be diminished, almost to be invisible. Talk about being muted, going from 133 pounds to 85. I mean, I totally was physically shrinking and I didn't realize it.
Yes.
So it was fascinating. But, what I've learned and grown from that is that, especially over the last 2 or so years, I know now what I want in my life. I know what I want in my relationships. I've built a very strong spiritual foundation that has recently led to me finding my soulmate. Wow. And so, again, I could have looked at all of those experiences early on as being bad, challenging, difficult, painful, but they really have led to this ability to totally live life on a different level than I ever have been able to before.
Yes.
And to manifest relationships that I've always wanted.
Mm.
So the timing was amazing. It was part of my healing in my work to get to this point.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, I think there's certainly times that it takes us time to be able to acknowledge that this is like another step, another peel of the onion that comes off,
yeah.
so that we're okay with sharing it. That
Mhm.
emotional sting has been healed enough that
Yes.
we're able to share it, and it's more of just a story and
Yes.
the foundation that brought us to where we are, but yet it's still not such an emotional trigger that we can't
Yeah.
talk about it.
Right.
We're actually becoming of service because that
Yes.
mess has now become our message, and the message is of healing and hope
Yes.
and joy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, what I've found over the last 3 years is that the writing is my biggest way of sharing that.
Yes.
And I think we don't quite know what we're capable of as far as writing a chapter or writing a book until we actually start to do it.
Oh, yes, definitely. I feel like I mean, writing has been such a big part of my life for years. And I remember I started my blog back in 2015, I think, Valentine's Day.
Ah,
I posted my first blog, and I go back and read some of those and I go, "Oh my." They're not very good, but they were at the heart of where I was there. And it's
yes.
sort of
Yeah.
like you're talking about. Every time you're in a chapter, it's something else that was able to peel away. And
Yes.
so, even as I watch my writing progress,
Yeah.
I'm not that same person.
No.
So I
No.
can write about different things on a deeper level
Yes.
than I would have ever dreamed back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I always encourage people that if they have any interest at all in writing about their story, start out small. Start out with a chapter in a
Yes.
book,
Mm-hmm.
and then just kind of
Yeah.
go from there. Because it's so healing, just the process.
Yes, it is. I don't think you could ever write something personal like that without some kind of growth, additional
Mhm.
growth. That
Yes.
you may think you have healed completely through that and you're good to go. And then you'll find another layer that needs to be
Yeah.
peeled
Yeah.
away. So there's always a healing process, a transformational process as we write our stories. And
Yeah.
that's why I love it that every one of these stories in Unmuted Voices even is always shares hope, because
Yeah.
they didn't stay there. Y'all didn't stay there. We didn't stay
Mhm.
there, because I have a chapter in the book too.
Yeah.
I didn't stay in religious trauma. I moved through that, and
Yes.
still working on it. It's a journey always. Um,
Well,
but
and we never know who's going to pick up that book
yes.
or who we choose to gift it to. Or,
Mm-hmm.
I share all the books with my clients, with my family, with friends, with, people I meet. I know you've heard this story before too. I walk in a community that's got two different lakes and two different book boxes. And every time one of the new books comes out, I always go put one in the book box and just with a little note on my chapter saying something of, I've lived in this community, or, enjoy, or whatever. Because you just never know.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I was in a breakout room just this recently, in a meeting, and we were talking about asking others to share, and how sometimes it's difficult for us to, kind of put ourselves out there and ask for help, or ask for people to share. But like one of the ladies mentioned, you don't think about sharing to maybe a specific person. Just share it, because you don't know who is out there who might read your words, who might pick up a course, or,
Mhm.
decide to coach with someone, because you don't know that they're suffering in silence.
Right.
They're suffering because of their muted voices. And
Yes.
so, like Lori says, just share it.
Yeah.
She didn't know who would pick up this out of the book
No.
box.
No.
It's source knows no bounds. Energy knows no bounds. Healing knows no bounds. So
Right.
we don't know. Just share, share, share. Share what's on your heart. Share the message of hope and love. So, what were some of the gifts that you feel like have come out of that? Because I know you have
Mhm.
so many questions in your integrative exercises at the end of your chapter that we
Yeah.
might touch on a couple of those. But what what were some
Yeah.
of the gifts that have shown up for you because you said yes to
Mhm.
writing a book, being in a chapter? Um, what is this impact
Yeah.
for you?
For me, it's that I find myself, the more I write and the more I offer, my stories in the chapters, the more grounded I feel, the
Mm,
more aligned I feel with my own values and kind of the calling from my heart and my soul. And then I also, am more comfortable with, and part of my title in this chapter is being unapologetically me. And so I no longer am willing to kind of change who
mhm.
I am to meet someone else's needs or requirements or something like that. So I think it has helped me to learn how to discern better, which relationships are really good for me and which are going to support my,
Mhm.
continued growth and transformation. So it's led to me looking at certain relationships and choosing not to be involved anymore, whether it's friendships or, colleagues. And so, I mean, that's been huge to me.
Mhm.
Um, so that I think that's probably been the biggest piece. And then, being just really excited about sharing these stories with everyone and anyone. And
Yeah.
so, sometimes when we write things and we're saying it for the first time, we might have some concerns about what our family or our friends or others
Mhm.
might think about
Mhm.
it. But actually, it's our own experience, and maybe they didn't experience the situation the same, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah, I so agree. Because there was one time, not that long ago, last year maybe, that I finally thought, this is the only sister that I have left in my family. My parents are gone and her twin is gone. And so it's just she and I. And I called her one day and I said, "How was your childhood experience?" Just
Mhm.
like you said, hers is so different from
Yeah,
mine,
yeah.
you
And it
know?
doesn't make either one of those experiences wrong. It's just it
No.
was different.
Yeah, it was so different, such a different experience, because they perceive things differently. They seem to be a little more compliant, where I was not as compliant. So, in our religious upbringing, it was a very staunch, very, you know, controlling kind of
Yeah.
situation, because they were so trying to, my parents were trying to get me to do what they thought was right. So they were teaching me to follow the rules, and uh and when I couldn't, they just used whatever means that they thought would help.
Yeah.
So I'm not bashing what my parents did, or how my childhood was so much more kind of negative than my
Yeah.
sisters were, because we're all working from what we have. I mean, if I could go back and do some of the things differently with my children,
Right.
because I'm so much more at peace now.
Yeah.
Oh, it could have been a much better childhood for them too. So
Yeah.
certainly we're always to the point where we do reap the benefits of these gifts that come out of our healing.
Absolutely.
And sharing.
Well, and I think also the people then that we are interacting with when we're in this kind of stage of our life are benefiting,
Yeah.
as well, right? Because we're showing up more confident, more peaceful, more happy. And,
Yeah.
People can see that and they can experience that.
Because you even mentioned to me, even how your siblings reacted to you, to reading your chapter.
Yeah.
You know,
Part
they
of
were
because I
like,
hadn't really shared with them,
mhm.
a lot of what I had been going through or working on. And so they were like, wow, we're happy for you. Congratulations. And even my sister, Christy, who's like 18 months younger than me, she reminded me, she's like, I was there most of the time with you as you were going through all this stuff. And, I was like so focused on me
Mhm.
that I didn't even realize,
Yeah.
So that opened up some, conversations with her about that.
Yeah. Yeah. We never know where the healing's going to lead.
Yeah.
Because that's, shifting, and they're seeing you in a different light, and you're seeing them in a different light. And even the situation it feels a little different now because you weren't so you're not in that self-absorbed place.
Yes.
Of protection and muting and, trying to regain your control.
Right.
Whereas now they get to see you as this different, strong person, in the strength in a different way, not an exterior way. It's that inner strength.
Yeah. It's more the inside.
Yeah. So I'd love for you to maybe talk about a couple of these questions that you have in your exercise, because they're powerful, folks. They're
I thought maybe we could look at a couple of them, and even maybe both you and I share it. And I guess encouraging people who are, watching, listening to this to really kind of dig deep themselves and answer these questions. And so one of the ones is, where in your body do you feel power? So when you're feeling powerful, like where in your body do you feel it?
Yeah, for me, I think I feel clear-minded.
Yeah.
But then I think that solar plexus, area where our self-power is and our self-empowerment spot is. And I'm actually very even mindful of wearing my crystals or stones. Like this is an amber. So this is a sunny stone, which reflects our solar plexus, of course. And because I need that support. And so, yeah, for me, I think I feel clear-minded. I feel the clarity of my thoughts. The confusion is, the cobwebs are kind of swept away. And then you feel that forward motion of your solar plexus pulling you forward.
Yeah. Me too. It's solar plexus. It's kind of in some ways it is for me tied to the anorexia, because as I was really enthralled all those years, I kind of didn't allow myself to feel hunger or anything in that whole area. And so I shut that down. And what I'm finding is that is where my strength is. That's where I tap into my intuition. That's where I make my best decisions from. And I think how we can tie it to, muting or unmuting is that when we know and can trust what the body signals that we're receiving, it allows us to use our voice instead of shutting it down. But there's got to be that connection and that recognition of our bodies talk to us all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
And we need to listen.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's a great question. So when we're feeling the most powerful, like where are we feeling it?
Mm-hmm.
And then how are we making our decisions from that place?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely have to feel a pretty strong yes in my body, the way I make decisions. So, because if it's just a mushy, I don't know, or a
Yeah.
maybe,
Yeah.
then it's really a hell no.
Right.
It's not a hell yes. So until you get that full, oh, I'm exhilarated, this is the way,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and how many of us have not listened and not paid attention, and
Yeah.
So I think when I work with my coaching clients, that's one of the things that we talk a lot about is just kind of really understanding the signals that our body is giving us, and to trust them. And for some people, that's so new; they haven't really, learned that or thought about that before.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, years ago, when I first started studying metaphysics, I got Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life.
Yes.
And in the back of her book, the book is so great, but in the back of the book are all these diseases and body parts and illnesses and things. And then she lists the probable emotional cause.
Mm.
And I created so much sickness in my body because my body was listening, and I wasn't listening to my body because I didn't understand that. Like you talked about, we're just not taught to listen to our body. But our body's giving us signals all the time. And all the diseases and illnesses that I had over the years because of the toxic indoctrination that I was living that negative life, I could go down that list of emotional traumas or emotional probable causes and go, yep.
Yeah.
And this is why, because this is the belief I held. And it created this emotional response. And so it affected that part of my body. I mean, I think I say it in my chapter, and I've said it on the podcast before, that over the years from childhood up, I created throat or thyroid diseases 3 different times because of my muting.
Right.
I wasn't allowed to speak up. I wasn't, women were to be silent and to be submissive and, not let their wants, needs, and desires to be acknowledged.
Right.
Because that would interfere with whatever the man that was in her life wanted or needed. So I totally understand the physical thing now that I didn't understand before, and how our body is listening to our energy, to what we're talking about, to what we're being. So, you're wanting to even quiet, even to kind of disappear with your anorexia when you started with that and shrinking from, what'd you say, 133 pounds to 85? I mean, your poor little body was just responding to you trying to tell it it's not worthy.
Right. Absolutely. Right.
You're not worthy to be seen.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, and the other thing I know that we've talked about, and, I certainly, support my clients through, is the whole idea that, even though we're working and we're growing and we're transforming, if there is an area in our life that we still need to learn about, we will continue to have experiences and people, show up in our lives to help us to continue to work on it. So having those illnesses come up, at different times in your life, right? It's like,
absolutely.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Another opportunity.
Yeah, because now I'm much more aware of when my body gives me little signals.
Yeah.
Whereas before, I just thought I was a sickly person. I didn't know I had anything to do with it. But even then when we start understanding it, our intuition does even come through our body.
Right.
What a glorious offering that our body is giving us.
Yeah.
Oh, so
Yeah, another question I put in here that I again would kind of like our listeners and viewers to think about is, what if you were showing up as bold, brave, visible, and unstoppable? What are you no longer available for?
mm.
So if you're showing up in this way that you want to be bold, brave, visible, unstoppable, like what are you no longer available for?
I think for me, it would definitely be, I would no longer be available for fear of pulling
Mm,
back, of shying away,
yeah,
because what will they think?
yeah.
When I am in that position and I'm not wavering, I'm stable in that in the time, it's like, I really don't care what they think. This
Mm,
is my truth, big T truth.
yes.
Just because it doesn't resonate with them doesn't mean that what I'm saying isn't valid
Mm-hmm.
and worthy of being heard. We just have to put it out there rather than being scared of what others will think, because I do this almost every time thinking, what will somebody think
Yeah,
if I put this strong statement out there
yeah. So
that I
you would
believe.
not be available for fear.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wouldn't have to be that way anymore.
Mm,
It would be such an easier walk,
yeah.
you know, because it does feel easy when I'm in it,
Right.
when
Yes.
I go back into default and kind of go back into that proving energy instead of
Yeah.
into a sourced energy. So what about you?
It's very similar. I put self-doubt in comparison to others.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So very,
Yeah.
very similar. So if I'm showing up, confident and bold and brave and visible and just like nothing can stop me from
Hmm.
doing what's important and making the impact that I want to make, self-doubt has no room, and neither does comparing me to others. It doesn't, at that point, that doesn't even make any sense
Yes.
because I'm not like anyone else.
Mm.
Uniquely, here to, use my gifts and share them with others. And it doesn't really, like you said, it doesn't really matter what anybody else is doing.
No. I love how Abraham Hicks talks about it. It's like everybody else is irrelevant. Not that we don't care about them. It's
Yeah,
just
right,
that
right.
they're irrelevant to how we're living life, how we're vibrating, how we're believing, how we're knowing and trusting source, how we're trusting the unfolding of our life, and
Mm-hmm.
fulfilling our desires. Because I always love how you say the life that we desire and deserve. I love that. I love that statement that you always say. And
Yeah.
so really what somebody else is doing is irrelevant to how I want to feel good, how I
Mm-hmm.
want to determine my life to be. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because as we tap into the joy of who we are, our joy embodiment, our love embodiment, no matter what, we're going to be of benefit to
Yeah.
anybody around us. You can't cause harm
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
you're stably in your power, your boldness, your love, your joy,
Mm-hmm.
your
Mm-hmm.
clarity. So it's always a benefit,
Yeah. Yeah.
whether they're ready to hear it or not. You can't
Well, right.
you can't
Yeah. Yeah.
determine their readiness to hear or receiving, but um, you're
Yeah.
still raising the energy of the all that
Yeah.
is, of the
Yeah.
universe, of the planet. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I think the last question that I really love, and that is, kind of like taking it to action then. So then who do
Mhm.
we need to be to show up fully expressed and unmuted? Like,
Wow.
who do we need to be?
Wow.
I put confident, trusting, aligned with my why, my how, my what, focused on making an impact, being guided as that vehicle for transformation and being that catalyst. And so if I'm showing up in all of those ways, then I will be fully expressed and unmuted.
Yeah.
What about you, Marianne?
What popped in my head was I sing this little ditty.
Yeah.
Marianne, you are a being of love. Marianne, you are a being of love, 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 love. And it's this little ditty that I found on a. They sang it a little differently. I had to switch it up because I heard a coach talk about, say your name when you say your I ams,
Yes.
our affirmation statements, and even to the point of one of the coaches, talked about bilateral stimulation. So sometimes
Yes.
when I sing that little ditty or I say I am statement,
Yeah.
I do my bilateral stimulation because it locks it into your body.
Yeah.
It anchors it.
Yeah.
So now I can't remember what the question was you asked.
Who would you need to be to show
Okay.
up fully
That's
expressed,
it.
unmuted?
Yeah. That being of love, it covers so much.
Yeah.
Because it totally changes your perspective and how you approach life. So, I mean, for me, that's what immediately popped in my head. I could hear myself singing that little ditty
Yeah.
that I sing to myself. So yeah, just living that love embodied that we already are puts that trust, puts that why, how, and
Yeah.
answers those questions that we don't necessarily have answers to.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just heard that little ditty of what I am, a being of love.
I know you've heard this story, but I mean, at the last retreat with, one of our mentors, Darla Ledoux, one of the groups was doing an activity with all of us. And so we were in a huge circle and, one by one, people stepped into the middle of the circle and had to answer the question or the statement, I am.
Ooh.
And each person got about 5 different times to do that. And each time, the answer to I am got deeper and deeper for every person. And I probably will never forget this, but the last time that I stood into that circle, and Divya, who's such a dear friend of all of ours, Dr. Divya Shepherd, was there too. And I had this need, and I don't even know where this came from, but I stood right in front of her. And now I'm getting kind of emotional because I remember the feeling. Stood right in front of her and I said, I am worthy.
Yes.
And there was like this just connection and just this amazing feeling of that's the foundation. That's a foundation of being unmuted. That's the foundation of being able to use our gifts and help other people. But if we're not feeling that, it's tough to use our voice.
Very much.
But it was just the most neat and significant activity, at this retreat.
Yeah, that would be dynamic. To go through that process, if you went through it 5 times, it would turn deeper and deeper and So I hate to say, but I think we're running out of time for this recording, not time forever, but
right.
So I do want to thank you, Lori, for being my guest. And you can get a hold of Lori by contacting her through her email, Lori at inspiregreatnesscoaching.com. And of course, I'll also include her link on her LinkedIn and these all these links will be in the show notes for your convenience, because I do want you to connect with Lori if you feel that little tugging, because not only does she work with this, she also works with your geographical soulmate and matching you up, because she's a matchmaker for that. So be sure, and if that piques your interest, you definitely want to contact Lori, because it's amazing. She moved across the country during the pandemic to be in her geographical soulmate. So be sure and get a hold of Lori. And
Thank you,
also,
Mary.
yes, absolutely. Also, please like, comment, and share. Share this podcast. If this touched your heart and you know someone who it will touch, share it. Just share the video. It's because you don't know, like we talked about earlier, you don't know who's suffering in silence. And this may be the exact word they need to begin their healing journey. So I appreciate that. You can visit our website as we help authors become published and bestsellers and express their stories and tell everyone about who they are and what they can live and the healing that they can receive. Visit our website at envisiongreatness.com, because there's an opportunity to explore publishing, a free call with me, and you can apply to work with us. There's something there. If you feel a book or a chapter, there's an urgency for you to help participate and write your story, get a hold of me, because I'll be happy to help. Lori, do you have any parting words of wisdom you would like to share with us?
I think for me, it is like you were just mentioning, take the opportunity to write.
Yes.
It's a healing process, whether it's a journal, whether it's a book chapter, whether it's a book. But if you're not already, write.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Writing has been such a lifelong thing for me. I dabbled in it because I was told I wasn't a good reader. So then I didn't think I was a good writer either, all through childhood and up. But oh my, such a dynamic, powerful way to unlock and release things in our lives and then welcome in the
Yes.
healing. And that happens during writing. And that's why so many people that participate in anthologies like this have such a profound change and impact. It makes such a profound impact, for good in their lives, and they're using it. And so I thank you again, Lori, so much, so much for being my guest.
You're welcome.
And remember, everyone, you are joy looking for a way to express. Find someone, get a hold of Lori, get a hold of me, find a coach that will help you express you unapologetically. And we love you, and we'll talk to you next time.